I think the ways in which it's important are not necessarily obvious and linear. One answer that I would come up with immediately is that literature is both the practice of and practice for living. It is ways in which we can engage in ethical debate without engaging in unethical behavior. It is ways in which we can test out complex emotions, not simple things like, do I love someone or do I not love someone, which I recognize is complex, but more complex than that, like, do I love someone when this happens, or when that happens? And it allows us to build up a depository of possibilities. In this scenario, this might happen, or this might happen, or that might happen. It engages the imagination, and that lets us do things that aren't real, but have the sense of the real. And so when and if they ever become real, we have some level of preparation. But that sort of dialogue and that sort of conversation is exactly the kind of conversation that if I said this to a bunch of people who were in high school trying to decide what to do as a major, would be like, oh, so not English? In a world that we often run into today where the answer to what do I want to do for a living is how much does it pay, it's a different question, why is literature important? My answer is still it is important, though. It is important because it provides us with the skills to do any job, not a job. One of the real dangers of education in general is this move towards the idea that what we're doing is career planning as opposed to becoming educated. So if you major in something that is important today, there's no guarantee in 4, in 8, in 40 years that job still exists. And if the only thing you learn to do is the technical aspect of that job, then what you've prepared yourself for is your own uselessness. Because you've been so narrow in your pursuit, so specific that you're not able to feint, to juke, and to move. You're stuck being the version of you that planned for one thing all your life. Now, I don't think that's necessarily bad, and most people are intelligent enough and capable enough to make the switch when it comes. But if you want to say, what do we do in education, I think it's to prepare us for the possibility of those things.
So I think literature is important to study because it helps us imagine other people's existence and it helps us understand how other people lived in the past and now, and it gives us different perspectives on what other people are experiencing in their own reality. I think it's also something that links history to now because we have history and we have the stories, but literature helps us interpret it and not necessarily focus on the quote-unquote facts of the history, but rather how that history affects those people and how it affects us now and how it affects how we make decisions.
Well, English is important because culture is important. Language is important. Without language, the world as we know it wouldn't exist, or at least we wouldn't exist as sentient beings able to interpret it. And we need to learn how to think critically about culture, which English teaches us because it defines every aspect of our existence on this planet.
I think that what makes it unique is a combination of student and professor. Where I went to school for undergraduate school, there were a number of people who majored in English. 80, I think, all said and done, if you counted the people who were secondary ed and the like. And it was great. I had a number of classes. We had all kinds of interesting discussions and dialogues, and I really enjoyed it. But what is available here is an opportunity to work and know everyone in the department and everyone that teaches, that helps run the office, that is the head of the department. I think everybody who majors in English or in literary studies here at Del Val they know all there is to know about it, to the extent of which, at least for myself, I can say with a great deal of confidence. But what we do here, and what's important to me and to everybody who teaches here, and to everybody who, I hope to everybody who goes here, is that it's collaborative. That what we do is not simply teach the things we want in that same sort of drink this disgusting Pepto-Bismol, it's good for you, or this sickening cough syrup. Sure, you will probably run into a class or two that you don't particularly enjoy. But we try to design it in such a way that there is no single path to success here, with the exception of being a part of the department.
The professors here really get to know their students and know us on like a more personal level, which helps them teach us better because they know what's important to us and how to connect with us. And I think it's interesting how they're always talking to each other, so I think certain subjects come up in certain semesters and they all try to integrate the same things into all their classes, and then you have this interesting clash where you'll have different things from different classes all coming together in this sort of unity, and it's really cool to discover things like that.
If people come here and they major in English, if they major in literary studies, I think they not only get an education that lets them move on to schooling that matters, and we've had plenty of people that left here and went to very good schools, but they also get an education in how a department like this works, what it means to be a collaborator in a really complex department, one that's trying to wrestle with a number of different issues, global and local, and also with texts as old as 2,000, 3,000 years old and as recent as yesterday. And in that process, we want the students to be not just participants in the classroom, but participants in every aspect of what we do.
So I think one of my favorite classes here at Del Val was contemporary literature, because it helps you look at different stories and different viewpoints, and it helps, I really think it helps like students understand the basis of like humanity, because if we can't be sympathetic or empathetic to other people, then how can we like live in this world?
We want them to help design courses, help figure out what path makes the most sense for them, pick tracks and minors and the like that benefit them and help them work their way through whatever interests they might have that this school can offer.
My favorite English class that I took here would probably be environmental literature with Dr. Stamps. That class really allowed me to explore how studying literature in my English major related to the environmental issues that I studied in my other major of zoo science, and it also taught me how important it is to be a well-rounded individual in any field. I think this English department is so unique because we're all so close, and they really care about whether you succeed or not. Their classes aren't just about whether you pass or whether you fail, it's about learning something you can apply in your own life or major, and it's about becoming a better person.
Beyond which, and I can't stress this enough, it's fun. At one point, when I was an undergrad, I majored in way too many things, but at one point when I was an undergraduate, the one thing I realized, I think, that turned me from my various other majors to this is that for a living, I get to read the fantastic. I get to read the beautiful, the sublime. I get to read the complex and the difficult and the sad. And I love that. I mean, my textbook are some of the greatest bits of writing ever conceived. My entrance into what I want to do for a living and how I'm going to live my life is Nietzsche, is Derrida, is Sylvia Plath, is Margaret Atwood, is Beowulf and Gilgamesh. It is enjoyable, and that's to me maybe the best selling point. I think that it is that in my mind, the study of literature has never been the shutting of any doors. It's only ever been the opening of windows and doors and secret passageways. And that's why I'd study it.